Hey y'all, it's Erin, aka Grishno, and I just outed myself to an entire class. So I'm sitting there today, and it's microeconomics class, and we're sitting there and we're talking about the labor force participation rate, which is dropping. And so we were discussing, why is that? One of the theories that came up was around discrimination, and the teacher was really pushing back on this. She was like, I don't think that the US is an outlier when it comes to discrimination. And other people were making points saying, yes, like the US is worse than other countries. There's, specific things that are going on. And finally the teacher asks, well, who here in this class has been discriminated against at a job? I raise my hand like this. And I look around, I'm the only white person. The only other people raising their hand are people of color, which again, this isn't surprising given the United States. And so immediately, like as I'm the outlier here, the teacher turns to me and she's like, Erin, will you share your story? I'm like, uh-oh, uh-oh. I was not planning to share this story. So what happened? I was working at a store called Really Great Things, and it was the kind of place that you would go to buy an $800 pair of boots or a $3,000 dress for the Emmys. And I was on the main sales floor in the main store, and I did a great fucking job. I did an amazing job there. There was one lady who came in. I spent an entire weekend with her in the store. And in the end, she spent about $25,000. She wanted to fly me down to DC, where she was based out of, so that I could go through her wardrobe and be like her personal stylist. That just shows like I was doing a good job. I was making big sales and things were going well. And there was one day where I knew that I wasn't passing. You get up in the morning and you look in the mirror and you say, oh, this isn't working. This isn't working. And you like, let's try on a different outfit. Like maybe if I do my hair, maybe if I put on more makeup, but like just nothing was working that day. I just knew that I wasn't passing. But at the same time, I couldn't afford to not go to work. Like I was barely scraping by paycheck to paycheck. There were months where I had to choose whether to pay rent or to pay my cell phone or whether to eat. So I didn't really have the luxury of just saying, well, I'm not passing today, I'm going to call out. So I went in and I got clocked. They didn't know that I was trans, but that day they figured it out. And they had never once struggled to use female pronouns for me. But the second that they clocked me, all of a sudden they couldn't get it right. They couldn't get female pronouns right. And within about a week of this, I was moved from the sales floor down to the stock room. Eventually, I was moved away from their main store to this little satellite store where they sold last season's stuff. But it was so hostile. Like everyone there was misgendering me, and it was coming from the top down, this culture of disrespect. And it happened the second that they clocked me, because before then everything was fine and I'd been there for like 2 months at that point. So I know it was because they figured out that I was trans. And it created this environment where I didn't feel safe. I didn't feel comfortable coming to work. It was hostile for me to be there. And so I left. This isn't a unique situation. This is something that trans people experience all across the country, all over the world. And so it's important for me to talk about. It's important for me to get up and tell this story and talk about what happened to me and let people know that this is going on. This is something that's real. This exists. But in order to tell this story, you have to know that I'm trans. You have to know that. And so I'm sitting there in class, and the professor asks me if I'm willing to share my story. And I've told this story dozens of times, and this was the hardest time. Now, a lot of people at school, they already know that I'm trans. I don't hide it. I'm not stealth. I'm the president of the Gender Splendor Club, and I put on the Trans Day of Remembrance and a whole week of visibility. Like, I'm very visible and open about being trans. But this is a microeconomics course. This has nothing to do with gender. So I don't talk about it. I talk about economics in that class. And so this was the first time for me to stand up and say, all right, I'll share this story. So in order to start, everyone should know that I'm a trans woman, and this is what happened. And it was so hard. I was like shaking and just like getting tight everywhere. Like it was incredibly stressful to share this story, but again, so important to me that I do it. We ended class maybe 2 minutes after I shared this story. It was, right towards the end of class. And I get up and I'm walking out of the classroom, and as I get to the door, I hear, "Hey, Erin." And I turn back, and one of my friends in the class, one of the people who was talking about discrimination earlier, says, "Thank you for sharing." And I knew at that point I'd done the right thing. And it was hard. But just being open, just existing, just being authentic in who I am showed an entire classroom of people that this exists, that this happens, that this is real. And I'm proud. I am proud that I got to do that. Anyway, thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate it. Share down in the comments below. It's so important that we share these stories. And until next time, I'm Grishno, and I'll see you later.